consent agenda.
I move to approve consent agenda items A through G.
Second.
First and second, all those in favor? Opposed? Passes 7-0. Old business, approve Opportunity Academy early graduate request.
And a few more in there, as we've said before, those will trickle all throughout the year. It's always a cool thing to see those.
I move to approve the early graduation for Opportunity Academy students who are on pace to meet with the credit requirement.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? 7-0. Approve KASB recommended policy revision.
This policy revision deals with the wellness policy that was brought up, a few months ago for a first read, but we said we needed to look at that and have that correlate to what we're actually doing. So, Joni has done the research behind that, and Jane, and they feel like, I think it was Jane, they feel like this policy.
Are there any questions about that? I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the revision to policy JGCA, local health and wellness as presented. Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Passes 7-0. Summit plan for the spring of 2021.
The principals from Chisholm and Santa Fe are here to answer any questions. As we had talked at the last month, you guys gave us the go-ahead to come up with a plan for the remainder of the year. That's what the highlighted sections here include, those pieces of information that further delineate each one of those things that were brought up. And then at the June meeting, we will have a plan for next year. At the second June meeting, I believe is what I had. We have an actual more of a plan for next year. So the principals have, we have met several times, I think 3 times, since our last board meeting. They've been meeting with their respective staffs too, to go over some of these details. So we feel good about what we've got right now, and then, hopefully, at that June meeting, the plan will even have some more points, that'll carry through the next year, so. And we said we would stand for any questions you might have. Since Joey is officially the one that signed up to be at the meeting tonight, as the middle school representative, he is going to, take all the questions. I'm just kidding.
The only question that I have, we have talked in some other meetings about when the data is pulled, and sometimes it kind of goes like this. So when we're talking about next year, is that still gonna be the same case, or is there a way to kind of have that be consistent?
I would say it's still probably gonna go up and down depending on, like, it's all about project and power focus area due dates. And so when a due date passes, if students haven't turned it in by that specific due date, then the numbers do dip down and then they go back up as they get those things turned in. So that's why you see that up and down, is that it's that students turning that in at that specific due date when that blue line of progress, or that however you want to clarify it, passes for students. That's why you see that up and down as far as the percentages of completion.
One way to help that at grading periods, especially at semesters, is to consider chunking those classes into a first semester and a second semester, to where when you're pulling at the end of a term, like they have an honor roll at Chisholm, if I remember correctly, that should be based upon final grades of some sort, not formative or in-process grades like it has been. So that might be something that'll be helpful for some aspects of that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think in my head when I look at that data, how to utilize that when it's like this.
I think
I understand, but there's not really a good way to answer that, because like the math class may finish here, the social science class, that line of debt may not be coinciding with it, So when those data points are pulled, it's based upon that specific data. So, that's really a hard one to standardize.
And I would say also that, we're looking at the whole group of students. If you really want to dig deep, it would be looking at each individual student's growth from the beginning of the year till the end of the year. And that's where you would truly see, the amount of learning that's taken place from the beginning of the year till the end of the year. And so that's something that's hard to present in a spreadsheet, but that's where you're gonna really see whether the student did learn what they were supposed to learn, needed to learn, or master the materials they needed to throughout the course of the year.
Well, and then when you think about like traditional settings with education, you wouldn't be able to see that fluctuation until maybe your grade card or your progress reports. And so one benefit of having the data on the dashboard is that you can see it every day. And some students that are fall behind, you can just pull them up and see how much they've improved or even regressed to make sure that they're getting the interventions needed to maintain, get better, or add on extra support.
I have a few questions. Joey, since you just mentioned looking at the individual growth per student, which I think we can agree is really important, but it's difficult to do when you have that many students. Will that information be shared with parents about their student at conferences, at 9 weeks, a semester, any point in the year?
As far as their individual growth, I think part of conferences would be looking at what they're doing in each class. You know, normally it would be looking at their grade card, which would be part of it, and see what their grades are at that time. But it would also include their progress in Summit, which is also part of their grade for each class. So yeah, and parents, you know, have access to Summit at any time. We can provide their login information so they can always see where their student is in real time at any time, whether it's at conferences or between conferences or in the middle of the week, anytime they're able to see that progress as well.
Okay. Looking at the section 3 for workshop expectations, please correct me if I'm wrong, that during state assessment weeks that Chisholm will not be having those workshop Wednesdays because your schedule had to be altered for assessments, correct?
I guess we haven't specifically talked about that with our teachers, but we are still doing the 8 period class days on assessment days. It's just a shortened schedule for those classes.
Okay.
So there will be some flexibility, which we've allowed a little bit of flexibility with workshop Wednesdays, being able to do it on other days besides Wednesday during the week, since we have students 5 days a week now. So I think the same would be true for our assessment weeks, because we do still have our normal schedule for Monday, Thursday, and Friday during our assessment weeks.
So they would have a workshop time somewhere in that week still?
The plan is to still do workshops, yeah.
Okay. Even though we call it workshop Wednesday and it doesn't have to be on Wednesday, but.
Yeah, and we still have a number of teachers who are doing it on specifically Wednesday, but there are, just depending on what's happening in the class and the due dates, we've allowed them to be a little more flexible if needed.
What does the workshop plan look like for Santa Fe? Is it a specific day of the week, or is it dependent on the teacher's schedule?
It's not a specific day, it's gonna be dependent on the teachers. The teachers are we will add the workshop piece into our data dives and talk more about that. But it'll be the teachers looking at their data and making a plan for what they need to workshop on. So it's not a set time or a certain day, it's within their schedule.
On number 4, you're discussing mentoring. A number of these other items, whether it be project benchmarks, or our focus areas, a lot of those are more easily measurable. How are you going to, I guess, measure and check on mentoring to ensure that that is happening?
So, and it is stated in there, there is, some issues with our platform data in mentoring, and so, the game plan right now, if you look at number 1, it's the 2 areas for mentoring. We do bi-weekly, so we are different, Chisholm does weekly, but we do bi-weekly for this year because of COVID and different things. And so there will be a staff survey that we will start doing on Friday, so we can pull accurate data. And it will be going to staff. where they'll be answering just two simple questions, that also then in the platform, you can go back and look at that information, but it would just be an easy way for us to pull a percentage to get that information. And then there's also a third question, if they need any help from administration or anything we can do, just so that there's that communication feedback.
So it would be, am I understanding it, it would be self-reporting for teachers?
It'd be self-reporting,
Okay.
but you can go back into the platform, to look it up, but it makes more sense, how many students have they, mentored with this week, and, they set goals and made note of it in the platform. Because those were the two areas for mentoring.
I have a question about parents and their ongoing education of learning the system. You guys had mentioned before that you did teach parents at some point how to use Navigate Summit, but that was a common concern I had from parents, that there was something that was lost in translation. So how much of this was already offered? Because I know you guys mentioned that you did offer it at one point, in the plan of improvement, where you're talking about to teach parents.
I know last year at Chisholm, there was a summit parent information night that we held, and we had different sessions for parents. And then this year, we obviously didn't because of COVID, but, in place of that, before December, we had created a few videos that are on the Chisholm Middle School website or our student information station that go through platform navigation and also an in-depth grading overview that goes into what a project is, what a focus area is, and the difference between those, and what the different colors mean in Summit. So those are two in-depth explanations that are available for parents to watch, since we weren't able to have like a parent night like we normally would have done.
For the remainder of this year, they're gonna create some videos that show that, and they're gonna have either a Facebook Live or a Zoom session, I'm not sure we've decided which one that's gonna be, where they'll also record that, where parents can then ask questions of those things, and they can point to where those resources. With 30 days of school left, you know, there's just not a lot of time to have a lot of parent meetings to where they can be meaningful, so they're kind of crunching this up, but you're right, next year, that has to be a lot more intentional in the fall.
Thank you.
Do we know, how many views those videos have had?
I do not. They're on our Chisholm website, and I don't have analytics for that at all.
Did Samantha might have?
We have installed them. For some reason, we had it on our main page and on high school, but the smaller schools did not have analytics. But we fixed that, so moving forward, we will be able to have.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Although with YouTube, we might be able to pull it, if you upload it through YouTube, I actually just thought we might be able to pull it from YouTube. So I'll look into that after.
Okay.
So Joey's gonna go home tonight and watch those videos 5 minutes.
Oh, goodness. Are there any further questions on this item? I don't think so. Thank you so much.
I have told all the principals except for Joey, they can go home after this if they want to, and you guys are finished with that, so, at least those that are sitting at the table, so. Those that signed up, you gotta stay for the whole thing, so. So if they're walking out, you gotta leave.
I am not offended. Our next item is new business, approval of gift request.
Looks like we have several. I move to approve the gift request as presented, from Harvey County United Way, AFCO Corporation, NHS Athletic Booster Club, Innovative Choreography LLC, 15 individual community donors, Millennium Machine, Family of Katie Rose, Joe Gilliam, Mid-Kansas Co-op Association, and Harvey County Farm Bureau.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor? Opposed? Andy and Kim, 7-0. Our next item is approved employee health insurance for 2021-2022.
Right, so I put this item on the board agenda, and really what it is it's a reflection of quite a bit of work that, we conducted internally to come up with what is a good option this year for healthcare. And it may not shock any of you that healthcare in general across the nation for most employers is gonna rise this year. And so that COVID obviously plays a big part of that. But so when we were looking at all of our options, we were trying to balance, well, what would make sense for USD 373? And what we were trying to do was work around what was projected to be a 15% rate increase across the board. And so what we ended up coming up with was the option that we pick here. So good for those listening at home, we're sticking with Blue Cross Blue Shield. But we are adding some things this year to our plan to make things a little bit more affordable. The rates are going to go up. If you just took your plan that you had last year and did the same exact thing this year, then you'll see a rate increase. But what I want you to see is that there's also some options in there if you want to be a little bit more economical. Specifically, we're really happy to add in that new high deductible plan. And so that high deductible plan is gonna basically start at a $6,000 deductible, but a much, much cheaper rate for the employees going forward. The other three options are very similar to what we had last year, but again, they're at different price points. So with 4 different price points coming out for the employees, we think we have an option for everyone, depending on what their family situation is, what their health insurance situation is, and their use to pick from. So what I'm asking today is for the board to go ahead and approve this plan so that we could get the information out to our employees to give them the best options for their health care next year.
Are there any questions for David? I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the employee health insurance plan for 2021-2022 as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? 7-0. Approve long-term suspension expulsion hearing officers.
This has been something that's been on my radar for the whole year. In that what I want to do is just, instead of having one hearing officer for the whole district, we have a committee that will hear any sort of long-term suspension or expulsion. That way it spreads the love, spreads the joy around all of our administrators, but then you have a multitude of perspectives when it comes to rendering a decision, which kind of helps protect all of the individuals involved in that. So from now on, when we do our organizational meeting in July, it'll be the same thing rather than just appointing the one officer. What we would do, they wouldn't all serve. If it were like a high school case, that list, in the secondary, we would pick 3 individuals from that. Sheila would be the one coordinating that hearing, but the individual panel of the individuals, the 3, would make that collective decision as to what happened in terms of the case.
Are there any questions?
Do you have any concerns with like consistency in the way that is, I mean, if we're just picking a different group of 3 people each time we do that, I mean, does that change?
I don't have any concerns. A lot of districts do it this way,
Okay.
to where then you don't have to worry about, somebody's personal preference, the perception of a personal preference being played into the decisions made each time.
If there are no other questions, I will entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve appointing a team of administrators to collaboratively represent as the district's expulsion and long-term suspension hearing officers for the 2020-2021 school year.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? 7-0. Summer recovery program.
I put something similar to this in my weekly notes that I sent out to all staff a couple of weeks ago, just expanding upon that a little bit, giving you some cost estimates about some of the programs. The dollars, none of the dollars will come from general fund or LOB. They'll all come either from grants outside or through our ESSER funds. Right now, we've got, for example, in ESSER 1, about $130-some thousand of unencumbered funds available. Our ESSER 2 funds, as we've talked about, we want to look at using those. There's around $2 million. If the legislature doesn't take some of those to support our general fund, we want to use some of those for HVAC repairs and things of that nature, in addition to, like we talked about, the nurse position, we want to continue for another year, and some other things like that. So, the cost estimate that I have in there, if you look at that particular sheet, it looks like, holy cow, that's a heck of a lot of money for what you're gonna be doing. That's all high end. We won't be spending that much. Like, when you look at, for example, on that spreadsheet, I have number of staff. I don't think that we'll get 300 staff, attending that Marzano presentation, but we want every teacher to have the opportunity to come and listen to Dr. Marzano. For those of you that don't know, he's kind of a rock star in educational circles from an educational research perspective. And he's really trying to make that and apply that to all levels of learning. He's in his early 70s right now, so he's actually branched off to create this Marzano Academies group. And they're really focusing on improving schools around creating culture. We feel real fortunate to have him kick this thing off. We are not entering into the Academies model. This is just kind of our opportunity to kick the tires a little bit to see how this competency-based educational programming can run in grades K through 4, okay? So when I have on there, for example, 300, we want, like I said, any staff member could come and watch that. We would pay them for the hour and a half of presentation time because it takes place off the contract. We would allow any staff member to participate in the full-day training sessions as well. So I put 100 there. I know we won't have 100 staff members. So I went high end on all of that stuff. So that $215,000 total at the very bottom, it won't be that much at all. If it's $150,000, I'll be very surprised. You know, if we can get 6 teachers to volunteer to actually participate in these summer sessions for learning recovery, I'll be very, very pleased, okay? Because we can't force them obviously to do that. So what we would do is we would have the training in June. We would have some time for them to actually create competencies or design curriculum and instruction and assessments around some high leverage competencies at grade levels. And then at the grade level they're currently leaving, and then the grade levels are going to go to kind of give them a springboard to that next grade level. Then we would try to have some engaging activities over the course of the summer in July for them to be able to participate in that. So we're looking at 4-day weeks, about 4 weeks worth of instruction where the actual teaching and learning would take place with a lot of opportunities for feedback. Okay? So it's a little bit different. We wouldn't do this normally, but having these ESSER funds available, we want to leverage that to get that competency-based approach just brought into our district so our staff can see how well it works, not only for them, but also for students. The high school side of things, at Newton High School, they're going to focus on credit recovery. There's another document in there that shows you the NHS credit recovery program. They're going to be using that software Edgenuity, which is the same software that is used over at Opportunity Academy. We had to purchase the software for the month of June to have access to that. Then beginning July 1, you'll see a little bit later, there is that request for Edgenuity for the whole fiscal year next year. The last couple of years, or last year, this past year, you guys had a combination of Odysseyware and Edgenuity. Odysseyware was at the high school and Edgenuity was Opportunity Academy. This allows for consistent software application, and really, for credit recovery, to me, it's superior just because it has some direct instruction built in, whereas Odysseyware is pretty text-based. 7 and 8, grade 7 and 8, they're going to focus on program completion through a grant that they have that will take place in June. Joey can answer those questions better than I, but those dollars are going to be coming from a whole different source. We haven't really worked on 5 and 6 yet because we were waiting kind of on what we were going to do with Summit, whether they were going to look at program completion or look at trying to expand that competency-based piece based upon what cognitive skills kids might be short in terms of deficits. So it's a lot of stuff to throw at you. We wanted to kind of give you an opportunity to ask any questions, and then Sheila can come up and clean up all the messes that I made in terms of ways that I've misspoken.
Are there any questions?
there's a lot of holes too. We've got like administrative, we gotta figure out how, we thought we had that lined out, and then that fell through, which I'm really bummed about. But we gotta figure out a way to make sure we have administration available and stuff like that. So we still have a few holes, but we'll make it right. It'll be a good summer program. And our goal is to offer it every summer for as long as we have these extra funds.
Okay, our next item will be the high gas bill due to the February freeze.
All right, well, I'm gonna try to do this briefly, but I wanna take you guys back to February 6th and 18th. And the winter storm that had a name called Uri. I found this out when I was doing my research. So Uri came from the 6th and the 18th and pretty much caused a little bit of havoc with natural gas bills. Now, I'm gonna throw some numbers at you, but the numbers aren't as important as just the magnitude is, so be focused there. So after February, in March, we did get a bill for February, a gas bill. And that bill was right around $35,000. Our normal gas bill is around $20,000. So about that time, I was high-fiving Fred saying, hey, I think we got through it. It wasn't great, but we went through it pretty well. No worries, it looks like we're good to go. And then last week, so now we're clearing April, on a Tuesday, a pretty significant bill shows up at the district office. And that bill was for about $160,000. And that was the pass-through that the energy company decided to go ahead and pass on to its customers, i.e. us. And so, and then even today, which I'm glad I didn't put the figures in here, and I'm glad Kate's here, but we got a bill that was Walton's gas bill, and it alone was $30,000 for that same time period. So I think Kate should have to answer the what happened.
Yeah, really.
So what is that? Our grand total, that brings us up to about $187,000, which is roughly 5 times what we thought it was going to be. And so that's significant. It's something that we do not have budgeted for. It is something that in probably my wildest dreams, I never anticipated that much variance occurring within a gas bill. I'm sure for all of you that own homes are thinking the same way. But what would you do when your gas bill jumped up 5 times what it usually is? And definitely, and Fred and I have talked about this, what about those families of our students that are out there, and can they absorb a bill that's 5 times higher? I hope that this does not repeat, and that this is something that's kind of unique to basically the school district and other types of industries, but that's the reality of it. So what are we gonna do? Well, we came up with this ingenious plan of not paying the bill. So that's our strategy. No, it is actually our strategy, but there's a little bit more to it. And I know I'm making light of it, but sometimes when some things get so ridiculous, the most you can, I mean, it's common. But what we're going to do is we've joined a consortium called KJUMP, which is the Kansas Joint Utility Management Program. And so us and a bunch of other school districts are combining, and pretty much they're hiring legal counsel that is suggesting to us, first step, don't pay the bill. Second step, let us do our investigation, which they think will take them about 6 weeks. And then when they do complete the investigation, we're gonna pay at what was our normal rate, which is about $3.70 per unit, which would bring our bill back down to about $35,000. But the rest of that balance, if it's going to be that full $187,000, or if it's gonna be a reduced amount, it's gonna take months to litigate. And so this is gonna be something that I'll be updating you guys on as we move forward, because we'll always kind of come back to it and say, okay, well, where are we at? What's Uri doing to us now? But it is something that at least the legal counsel seems that they're really confident in being able to have a solid case. Their 2 main points of contention are that they're not really fully convinced that we received the amount of gas that it says that we received. I don't know how you measure that, but they got a plan. And then on top of that, just looking at the allegations of price gouging and how that occurred, which clearly, from just a common sense standpoint, looks like that certainly occurred. But we're going to go that route And so at this meeting, I just wanted to bring it up as kind of informational, but at the next meeting, I'll go ahead and ask your guys' permission to officially join part of that group and pay the fee. I think it's gonna be around $500 for us to join that, get that legal representation. And so at this point, I really want to open that up for questions to all of you, because I know that was quite a bit, but I know you've heard about gas prices. Is there anything that we can answer in particular that would help kind of ease your minds a little bit? If we can't, our plan right now is to pay this out of our general fund as much as we can absorb, and if we can't, then if you shoot down the road several months, then it's possible that I'll put a request to you to actually dip into our contingency reserve. I can't think of a better use for it than something like this, but it may be exactly what we need to do. Any questions?
KJUMP is set up through KESB.
Yeah, KESB, sorry.
So did this K-Jump group, did that exist before this, or is this? a
They
response
actually
to your-
did, they did exist before this. It's mostly used to buy, gas and buy commodities like this at a reduced rate and bulk per se. But now the legal arm of it is what's being activated now, which is what we're gonna be joining specifically to retain, the services of this Jim Zakora Esquire. I think it's a firm in Kansas City. They're representing several universities that are in the same situation that we're in. And right now, I think there's 137 school districts that are in this group.
So it's a one-time fee of $500?
Yes.
And there's no ongoing fees?
I will look into that one closely. I don't wanna,
Yeah.
I know the initial is they're
And
asking for about
then
500.
the thought is, we don't pay a bill,
Right,
we continue to pay the other ones,
yes.
we just don't pay this ridiculous one. Do we pay the 35 or not pay the 35?
We will pay the 35
So we're 1 month out, so we can,
in about 6 weeks.
all right, and we just keep paying them going.
In about 6 weeks, we'll pay them what they believe is the minimum we need to pay to keep our services and to stay in good graces while they litigate the balance, which is that cost that they passed on to us, which was the.
And we have no idea how long that will take.
We have no idea. but,
It's not gonna be 2 months.
no. All I can do is advise you guys, especially those at home, watch your gas bills, see what, keep your eyes open, because again, we weren't anticipating getting a bill last month and a bill this month for February, so.
Are there any other questions? David, I feel like you should run the meetings, it's far more entertaining.
Oh, no. No, not really. Hey, you should see me when I have good news to report.
I'm waiting for that day.
Stand on the table.
Okay, our next item is Ingenuity quote for Opportunity Academy and Newton High School.
As you heard a little bit earlier in talking about, our summer programming, and we have been visiting with Mr. Smith and the high school and thinking about not only how can we support our, students, in a, better way and using Ingenuity versus the Odyssey where, the features that are there. And so what you're gonna see there is, not only the quote for, double check what I'm clicking on here, being able to use this for, the time period from the last day of school through the end of July, because with that summer program for the high school, they'll have students that'll be going through June and July. After this school year, as we see Ingenuity and the success of that and being available for our students then during the 21-22 school year, it'll be a site license, just like what we have at, Opportunity Academy. And so then we would have that time period to, grapple with there. It would just be something that would be available for us from renewal date to renewal date. And I don't have quite as much humor in my presentation as Dr. but I'll work on that part.
Okay, we have department reports that are there for your reading pleasure, if you so desire. Thank you to staff for putting this together. We do actually read those, so thank you.
Just really excited with what it is in the year. I love the energy and all the stuff that's going on. This Ag Academy report was super cool to listen to today, so that's it.
I really enjoyed having the students come in, and I'm excited to go visit them out there and see what they're doing, so.
Just echo the Ag Academy, I think that's great stuff and doing a lot of great things out there and appreciate you bringing them in and giving us an update.
I'll echo what Andy said, we are getting close to the end of the year, I think 30-ish some school days. This might be a year when adults are more excited about the end of the year than kids are. We almost need it. Okay, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.